In today's video, we'll cover what is bean scope. In today's video, we'll focus on Singleton Scope. So we know that whenever we are working on a Spring framework, the bean word always comes in. Here also, in to understand bean scope, we first need to know what bean is. In my earlier video, we have already covered that what bean is. I'll just revise a little bit that we know the concept of IoC inversion of control. So IoC container manage beans. Either it can be a single bean or it can be a multiple bean. Whatever bean is created, if you remember that 10 or 20 years ago in a Spring, we need to write an XML based configuration and we defined all the properties in our XML. And bean usually read those XML, whatever the property has been defined in that XML. But when annotation based things came in, we are defining those properties in annotation. But still, if you still go and check somewhere, right, many places they still refer to XML for better understanding, and that cause a lot of confusion. Anyhow, beans are created with the configuration metadata that you supply to the container, IoC container. Usually we put this information in XML, but here we are using @bean annotation. So in @bean annotation, whatever property we define, based on those property, bean is created. Now, one of the property in @bean annotation is bean scope. Bean scope is the information provided by bean definition. Okay, we'll cover what bean definition is in another video. It is a little lengthier topic. There are many properties over there, but just consider it that it is one of the feature of bean, that what all bean can do or what all information bean can provide. It contains the information how to create a specific bean. That's it. Very simple. In a Spring framework, we have 6 scopes. Singleton is one of the scope which is asked everywhere, and if you are familiar with this coding world or this IT thing, Singleton is very important. Everyone asks this and people usually get confused about Singleton, and they consider Singleton as is very complicated topic. Means people can get confused with Singleton, but anyhow. So there are 6 scopes in a Spring framework. 4 of those framework are used. Sorry, 4 of those scope are used for web application. Like for example, request, session, global session. These are some of the bean scope. So to summarize it, bean scope is one of the property defined under @bean annotation. So Singleton scope. So in short, whenever Singleton comes in Java, in Spring or anywhere else, it is always mean you need to remember one. Singleton means only one. Don't get confused. One, when you say one, and with Java or with Spring, they add one more step, is that one instance, one object. That's it. Only one instance is created when you define bean scope to Singleton. So the first and the important bean scope is Singleton, and only one instance is created. That one instance is shared across all the requests made within the container. So you need to understand one more thing. This is little one of the more important thing. Then usually they ask, right, where this information is stored. So the instance which is created, which is a single instance, and you cannot create one more instance. This information is cached, and whoever requests that same bean, they are referenced to a cached object. So the interviewer or anyone can ask you that when a Singleton bean is created and that object is stored in a cache location, then when another object calls the same bean, then what it will return? So it will return a cached object. So if you're liking it, give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel for more upcoming videos. Now there is one more thing. This is quite funny. Gang of 4. I hope you might have heard of this term, or if you have not heard of it, you can Google it. What is this gang of 4? So there were 4 people who has done quite good thing. They have written one book. I'll not tell you what that book is. book is. But anyhow, so why I'm referring gang of 4 here is that string singleton, as I said earlier, right? In Java string, in Java we have singleton design pattern, or we have singleton scope, whereas Spring Singleton is different from Singleton design pattern. Why it is different from Singleton design pattern is because in Singleton Spring we have only one instance per one container, whereas in Singleton design pattern we can have only one for entire object. When I say that Spring Singleton is different from Singleton design pattern because we can have multiple container, and in that multiple container we can have multiple singleton object. So if I have 5 container, in all those 5 container I can have 5 singleton object. So that is different. But in singleton design pattern, in that entire flow only one instance has to be there. That's the difference. That's why Spring Singleton is different from Singleton design pattern. Remember this thing always. They usually get confused. They ask you what is the difference between Spring Singleton and Singleton design pattern. Okay, we'll now just understand one example, whatever property we have defined. So this is a very simple example. If you see line number 7 and line number 15, we are defining our scope, and this is what it is, singleton. So I have written scope equal to singleton. This is for just to showcase you guys, but usually the singleton is the default scope. So you don't need to define singleton as in the code, it is by default. So if you need to change it to some other scope, for example prototype, request or session, then you need to put it in here. But for visualization perspective, I have just defined that bean scope. This is how you define it. This is how you define as a annotation base. XML base is very old, no one use it. Very old projects are still using it, and sooner or later they have to migrate to the newer project. For you to understand, and if anyone asks you, can you write me a normal singleton, a normal class defining a bean with a singleton scope? So this is just one line thing, @ bean annotation, scope equal to singleton or scope equal to prototype or anything else. Later on upcoming videos we'll cover other scope, and when we will start our project we'll build a nice project, and then it will be easier for you to understand that how internally it only gets the same object. So I think that's all for today's video. Thank you so much.